Okay guys, so now that you've read that, a few questions that for you, based on those scriptures, that I would like you to think about. You don't have to discuss this as a group necessarily, but things that I do want you to ask yourselves and really look to the scriptures for and see it there is, first of all, like in Acts chapter 1, what was the state of the disciples and understanding what Jesus would do for them in their mission? You know, did they know exactly what was going to happen? Were they organized? Were they just waiting? So that's one question I have. In Acts chapter 2 is where I really want to highlight, because now we have Jesus has ascended, he's gone, and there's one thing he promised them in chapter 1, and he said that, that the Holy Spirit, I will give you the Holy Spirit once I ascend. And so they're just waiting, and they don't know what that looks like. So my question is, what happened when Pentecost happened, when the Holy Spirit was poured out on them? What events happened? As a group, physically, maybe even individually? What did that look like? Now, last thing I really want to highlight, after going through those things and now knowing where the disciples were at that point, where I guess you could say the early church was at, and kind of seeing like how young and kind of how naive they were even themselves on what Christ really meant. Because if you look into chapter 1, they still thought that Christ was going to come and set up a physical kingdom. Even after he died and ascended, they still didn't get it. And so I feel like after the Holy Spirit is poured out, now they're kind of getting a glimpse of what he really means. What is the kingdom he's actually talking about? And if you look at chapter 2, verses 46 and 47, I'm going to read it for myself too. And it says, "And they continued daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved." Oh, I need to go back, sorry. Let's do 42 up into 47. So verse 42 in chapter 2. "And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking bread and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men as every man had needed." And then verse 46 and 47. And so this is where Johnny Wong, which he's the Adventist guy who started care groups. He's from Australia, by the way, and he bases his whole church on this, and he actually even ended up church planning with care groups. He hones in on this because it shows that, you know, at the bare minimum of, you know, the early church, I feel like, and what was when they were the strongest, yes, most persecuted, and it was the hardest, and they're so young and new in the faith, but freshly poured out Holy Spirit, they still met together in the temple. They were still what we call faithful Jews, but they were also faithful Christ followers, which wasn't very common at that time, kind of taboo, right? Some people didn't know whether Jesus was really Christ, Messiah, or not. And so for those who did believe in their tight-knit community, they met together in their homes as well. They still went to a temple, but then they met in the homes, and they broke bread together. They shared their food, and it says they even shared their means. And if anybody didn't have something, they shared what they had so that everybody had something. And it just goes to show that they were caring towards each other, they supported each other, and they were sacrificial for the benefit of each other. And I think that's really the heart of care groups. Johnny Wong says that there's an important part of care groups, and it is to meet in your homes. I'll probably repeat this, but through this, there's something about meeting in each other's homes. It's a very vulnerable, sacrificial thing to do, because a home tells you a lot about a person, and you could say, oh wow, they have a really humble home, or you could say, wow, what do they do for work? This house is so wonderful. Those are things that you might think when you go to a person's house. So it's a vulnerable thing to open up your house to somebody. But when somebody not only opens up their home to you, but yet feeds you, that also not just shows vulnerability, but care, real love. And because that's just a basic means of life, is to eat. I think especially for a college student, now you don't have to do it for young people. Anybody can make a care group. I've seen, if you might know Menorca from the Maranatha Spanish church, she saw us do care group. She's like, I'm going to do it too. So she started doing it, and she had her group of friends doing it, and she would feed them, and people were so spiritually fed by that too. And there's just something special about it that the Lord has made about giving people to come to your home. So care group should never be in a church. Now there is a time to gather in the church, right? They met in the temple. There's a time for Vespers, and that's fine. But care group is special to where it should be in the home. It should have a meal together, not chips and salsa, and also through the meal, which maybe I shouldn't go to, I might repeat myself later, but it's also showing them the health message, because it should be healthy, to our health message food. And it kind of like, before you even get into that one-on-one study stage with your friend, and where things start getting more to those controversial topics of, should we eat pork or not, and oh, is shrimp bad, why do you not eat shrimp, like, oh, that's so legalistic, they actually see, like, in your lifestyle with a group of people, like, wow, this is enjoyable, this is great, I've never disliked or lacked in food, like, it's very doable, to where even a group of people can enjoy it. So it's actually a message in itself, the food too. So I'll give a break here, and I'm going to check my notes really quick on what we should talk about next.